Hello, boys and girls. Today's targeted math lesson will be on TEK 4.5a and 4.9a. Let's take a look at each one of these TEKs in more detail. For TEK 4.5a, we are going to solve multiple step addition and subtraction word problems with strip diagrams. When identifying strip diagrams for a particular operation, and by operation I mean addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, it can be a challenge to identify which strip diagram reflects which operation. So let's take a look at this. This flow chart sort of gives you an overview of how to identify the correct strip diagram based on the operation. So when you first look at your math problem, you ask yourself, do you have the total? If you do not have a total, then what you have are parts. You have parts of the total that have been provided in the math problem. So what does that math problem want you to do? It is wanting you to combine those parts to have a total amount of parts. All right, well, that is either going to require you to use addition, or it is going to require you to use multiplication. Well, to use addition, you have to have equal parts if you are going to use multiplication. If you don't have equal parts, then you're going to use addition to get your total amount. So when you ask yourself, do you have the total? And the answer is yes, then the math problem is requiring you to identify a missing part. All right, and this is reflected on the right side of the flowchart. And in this case, you're going to need to identify whatever that missing part is. All right, if you have equal parts, then you can use division. And we will be learning how to use division here in fourth grade very shortly. And you will see how that benefits you in finding answers when you have equal parts. But when you don't have equal parts, then you use subtraction. All right, so identifying strip diagrams and identifying which operation is being reflected in that strip diagram requires practice. Lots of practice in order to be able to understand what that strip diagram is communicating. All right, so let's take a look at our first word problem. And as I've shared before, when you have a word problem, look at it as being a math story. It is going to tell you a very short, very quick story about something that is going on. So let's take a look at this math story. The Clark family is going hiking tomorrow. To get ready, Mr. Clark is packing backpacks with supplies for each family member. He buys 2 boxes with 6 granola bars each. He puts the same number of granola bars in each of the 4 backpacks. Now use the diagram, and that is the strip diagram that you see here on the screen, to find the variable G, which represents the number of granola bars in each backpack. All right, well, let's take a look at this strip diagram and how this strip diagram relates to our story. Well, you can see on that first row that you have 2 6s. What do those 2 6s represent? Well, if you look back in your story, Mr. Clark bought 2 boxes of granola bars. How many granola bars were in each box? There were 6. So those first 2 6s on the first row represent the granola bars that were in those 2 boxes. Look at the second row. All right, you've got 4 boxes with the variable G in them. What do those 4 boxes represent? Well, those represent each of the backpacks, because how many family members are there? There are 4 family members, and each person is going to have their own backpack. So row 2 represents the backpacks, and the variable G represents how many granola bars are going to go in each backpack. All right, the math story told you that there would be an equal number, same number of granola bars going into each backpack. All right, so let's draw a picture. We have one box of 6 and we have another box of 6. All right, well, can you divide the number 6 equally into 2 groups? Yes, you can. And you know this from learning your multiplication facts. What multiplication fact of 6 can you use to get that 6 is an answer that has 2 equal parts? Well, it's the number 3, because the number 3 not only is 3 plus 3, 6, but 3 times 2 is 6. All right, so you can see from your drawing and from understanding how there are 2 equal parts in the number 6 that the total number of granola bars that are going to be put into each backpack is 3. So what does the variable G answer? It is equal to 3 granola bars. 3 granola bars each in each backpack. Our second TEK is 4.9a. And 4.9a uses stem and leaf plots to represent data. And that's what we're going to take a look at today, is how can a stem and leaf plot represent data, as well as how do you interpret the data in a stem and leaf plot. When you're asked to work on a stem and leaf plot, try to visualize a tree and how a tree is made up of many stems and many leaves. But for each stem, there are many leaves. And the stem in a stem and leaf plot represents the larger place value in comparison to the leaf, which represents the less valuable digit in terms of place value. Because on one stem, you can have many leaves. And you can see here on the anchor chart as an example, if you have a stem of 4 and a leaf of 4, that stem 4 is the larger place value. The leaf 4 has less place value than the stem. And what does that number really represent? It represents the number 44. All right, if you have a stem 4 and a leaf 9, then that represents the number 49. So the leaf 4 and the leaf 9 are both coming from and are connected to the stem 4 because they share the same first digit in that particular place value. All right, so let's work on answering a stem and leaf plot question. All right, it says the scores of 15 students on a math quiz are posted in the stem and leaf plot below. And you can see the stem and leaf plot that is identified here on the left. You have your title, which is math quiz scores. And then underneath that, you have a column for the stems and a column for the leaf. All right, and you'll notice that each row represents a different stem along with the different leaves that are associated with that stem. So for example, in that first row, you have a stem of 4 and you have 2 leaves, a 3 and a 6. So what number do those does the stem and leaves for row 1 really represent? It represents the number 43 and the number 46. A stem and leaf plot, once you do practice on interpreting the data and reading the data, it will become easier and easier to understand how to do that. It just takes practice. So let's answer some questions here using the data that's in the stem and leaf plot. Our first question is, what is the highest quiz score posted? All right. Well, the stems are always the first place value of the digit in the number. All right. So which stem has the highest place value digit? All right. Well, you can see that we have a 7. A 7 digit is always going to have more value and a higher value than the 4. All right. So 7, it has got our highest data point. What leaf comes with that 7? It's a 0. All right. So what is that number? If it has a stem of 7 and a leaf of 0, it's the number 70. And that is the highest number in the stem and leaf plot. So that is the answer to question number 1. That has the highest math score, 70. All right, let's look at number 2. What is the lowest quiz score posted? All right. Well, in contrast to the 7, which has the highest score, look at your lowest number in the stem in the stem column, and that is 4. So 4 is where you are going to find your lowest quiz score. Now you have to look at your leaves, because for stem 4, there are 2 leaves. You have a leaf of 3 and a leaf of 6. Which one of those digits has lesser value? Well, it's the 3. A 3 is always less than 6. So what is going to be your lowest quiz score? It is going to be 43. 43. All right, question number 3. What is the difference between the highest and the lowest quiz scores? All right, well, we've already identified the highest quiz score, which is 70, and we've identified the lowest quiz score, which is 43. So it's asking us for the difference, and anytime you're asked for the difference of something, that is always, always a subtraction problem. So we are going to subtract 70 minus 43, and that leaves us with 27. So the answer to question number 3 is 27. On this slide and the next slide are your exit tickets. Please do your best to show that you have mastered and understand how to use strip diagrams and stem and leaf plots.